In this budget, what wasn't mentioned was probably more interesting than what was. So the expected rise in capital gains tax didn't emerge. Capital gains tax rates remain the same. No reform or increase in inheritance tax. And we were told, I suppose, that the corporation tax rate of 25% coming in 2023 was still coming in after some hopes that it would be reversed. Also, nothing mentioned on hybrid working. Lots of lobbying has gone on in advance of the budget to try and get the expenses paid to people who work from home, get that tax system reformed, as well as home to office travel when people are coming to the office less often. None of that was mentioned. And various reforms around the employee ownership trust regime. We did expect some changes, and none of those came up in the speech or were in any of the detail either. So all of those matters absent from the autumn statement. So we're still expecting, as I said, the 25% corporation tax rate, which will come in April 2023. The 130% super deduction to encourage capital spend, that's still in place and will carry on until March 2023. And the annual investment allowance of £1 million a year, less relevant now we've got the super deduction, but extended until March 2023 from its current expiry this year. So all of that is more or less as expected. What was a surprise were some comments around research and development. So we knew what was coming down the track. Some extra categories of expenditure would be included, so cloud computing costs and data costs. What came as a bit of a surprise was a statement of intent to refocus this regime to support innovation in the UK. And this is directed at the amount of government subsidies which are subsidising UK companies but are then carrying out their research and development activities abroad. That is very likely to stop being possible in the future. We're waiting on a consultation for the detail, but a refocusing of the relief, I would say, would come in the next year or so. Well, we've got a suite of creative sector tax credits. They support all various elements of the creative sectors, but the ones that got focused today were around theatre tax credits, orchestra tax credits, and museums and galleries tax credits. So we've had an extension of museum and gallery tax relief for 2 years. That will now run to March 2024. And then there's a doubling of the rates of relief for the theatre tax credit, the orchestra tax credit, and the museums and galleries tax credit. So the doubling of the relief, that's great. These aren't very expensive reliefs for the Treasury. The last reported cost, the combined cost to the Treasury of these reliefs was 110 million, which in budgetary terms isn't really very much. So the doubling of these reliefs is more of a headline grabber. It's of course useful for the sector, but this isn't a big budgetary measure. With the doubling of relief, there's always the paranoia that will come with abuse. So we've been warned that there'll be extra safeguards introduced. So that may mean that even though the relief's doubling, the actual claiming of the reliefs may become more difficult. Well, the Chancellor opened his section on business rates by saying business rates collect 28 billion, so it's a very difficult thing to scrap, which is what many calls ahead of the budget had requested. Therefore, if it couldn't be scrapped, could the business rates regime be reformed? The Chancellor's had some go at doing that, probably not enough, and not enough to keep as many people happy as he'd like to. We're still going to have a big imbalance between online retailers who don't have business rates on retail premises versus high street retailers. What has been done is the multiplier for business rates for calculating the amounts due each year is being frozen. They'll be at the same, the multiplier will be at the same rate for the third year running. We've got a temporary concession for retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, so they'll get a 50% reduction in their business rates. And there's an increase in the frequency of valuations to try and make the business rates track the value of the properties a bit more accurately. So the revaluations will take place every 3 years rather than every 5 years. A few other measures announced with it, but in the whole, although they all add up to quite a lot of budgetary spend, they won't be what high street retailers and other businesses were hoping for. Well, the Chancellor made a number of references to the UK being no longer part of the EU in the speech, and that gave us hope that there'll be some wholesale reform of some elements of the tax system now that we're no longer constrained by EU rules. That isn't really what we heard. We lose the ability from today to make some intra-EU group relief claims. If we've got losses in Europe, we can no longer relieve them against UK profits. We've got some reform to the tonnage tax system where instead of ships within the system being required to fly an EU flag. They're now going to be required to fly a UK only flag and be registered in the UK. And we've got a reform of alcohol duties. Now, the reform of alcohol duties took up a very large amount of the speech. Where it's heading is we're going to scrap what we've got at the moment. It won't happen immediately. Duties are frozen for the coming year. But after that, after some consultation, we'll end up with a system where duty will be charged at a higher rate on drinks with a higher level of alcohol. We're also going to lose the super duty on sparkling wine that was there because sparkling wine was viewed as a luxury good. Now there's a wide-scale consumption of Prosecco and other sparkling wines. That will be charged at the same rate as the equivalent white wine. It probably means you're going to save a few pennies off a bottle of Prosecco.